Hello and welcome to the 29th episode of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I'm Mark Bishop.
And as always, we're reading Anthony Kenny's A New History of Western Philosophy. Like I said, this is the 29th episode. Today we are talking about God. Yes. In the early modern era of philosophy. It's been a while since we've recorded. I'll have to get used to this again.
Yes, you've had a lot of activities in your personal life, and then you were ill. You got the coronavirus.
I did not. That is not true.
Oh, that is not true?
That is not true. Just a sinus infection.
The Wuhan flu? You didn't get that?
The China flu? The Kung flu?
The Kung flu?
I did not.
I did not. Okay. Well, you look good today.
It's been a while. It's been like a week and a half since I've read this chapter.
Oh, my goodness.
If not almost 2 weeks now.
I just finished it moments ago.
Yes, so it might be a little fresher in your mind. I was planning on recording this before I went away, but
now you're back.
Unfortunately that did not work. So this will be uploaded tonight, this Thursday, the whatever date it is, 24th.
Yes.
And then we'll be doing another episode this coming Monday. And that will be starting the modern era of philosophy.
Exciting.
So starting off with Molina on omniscience and freedom. So we kind of believe that God had complete and total omniscience of everything. So God knows what any possible creature would do in any possible circumstances. And therefore he knows all possible worlds and which one he would choose to actualize. So basically he views all possible worlds, so kind of like the multiverse theory, there's...
Yeah, Marvel type stuff.
That sort of thing. So it's like there's a universe for everything. So there's, if I make one decision in this universe, I do the opposite of that decision in another universe. And so it's all these branching paths, basically. And God can look at all of those, and he chooses which one to actualize. And so that's kind of how Molina brings in free will. And that we had free will to do all of these things, and that we made all these actions, and then God just chose which, path to put into play. So there were infinite paths in which we all made our own decisions, and then God just chose which path to put into motion, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, and you explained it very well, and I think it's a bunch of bunk. Because,
really?
Yeah, because if God is actualizing it, then do we really have a choice?
Yeah.
If he's the prime mover,
Mm-hmm.
if we have all these possibilities, but we don't actually choose them, he's actualizing them, then he's making the choice. So it's his free will, not ours. And so I think there's a deficit in that theory. It reminds me of my criticism of the new series Loki, although I have not seen the most recent episode where that they have like these timeline cops, and which kind of implies that all of the sacrifices and difficult choices of all the other superheroes were really not choices at all. They were going to do that no matter what. If they didn't, then they were going to get killed, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm assuming there'll be some sort of big twist in that series that fixes things, but we'll see.
I guess so. Well, don't you agree somewhat with Molina? Isn't that your theory, that God is omniscient and knows the future, all possible futures?
Yes.
So is this your philosophy?
I don't know. I don't have a set philosophy on this, but I do think that I don't know really how to reconcile my beliefs. I know that there's a way somewhere that God is completely omniscient with us still having free will.
Well, how do you answer my criticism of Molina?
I don't know.
Oh.
It's been a while since I've read this. It's been a while since I've thought about these topics.
Well, let's just kind of work it out. I mean, is there?
Well, per Molina's thinking, it's that we had that free will within each of these timelines, basically, in all of these universes.
Right.
So those decisions were purely ours, right, in every single one of these timelines. So therefore, it is still our decisions, even though God is picking which path to go down. So we still had the free will to make all those decisions in those timelines. God's just picking which timeline to use. So those actions were still ours. Those were not the responsibility of God.
Right. I see what you're saying.
The only issue is that all of those other options, once those are eradicated, that kind of takes away the free will because those are never actualized. Those never become fully fledged actions. So can you say that those actually ever happened? It's like, where's our free will in that?
Did you actually choose it?
Yeah.
I guess your theory is more like when you have a prisoner and you say you can choose the bullet or the guillotine. Mm-hmm. Either way, you're going to die in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But so then they'd still have the choice, and then or that the joke. This is I can tell this somewhat inappropriate joke. Can I tell a joke?
Absolutely.
It'll take a minute.
Okay.
So these explorers, in the, I guess it'd be 1700s, are going through the jungles of Africa. And they stumble upon a tribe, and the tribe has it captures them, and it kills all of them but two. And so there's two survivors, and they say to the first guy, and they speak some English for some reason.
I know this joke.
They say, "Do you choose death or Chi-Chi?" And he says, "I don't want death. I'll take Chi-Chi." And no, he doesn't. He didn't want Chi-Chi. Let's see, how does it go? And I just screwed up the joke. Do you want death or Chi-Chi? Yes. So do you want death or Chi-Chi? And so they Chi-Chi is just horrible, torturing, indescribable acts of depravity on this poor person, and it ultimately causes his death anyway. And so they say to the second guy, "What do you choose, death or Chi-Chi?" And he says, "Death." They say, "Okay, but first, Chi-Chi."
It's such a bad joke. It's got like no actual punchline.
That's a good punchline. So it's very similar. So
Yeah,
you could choose all these things, but still God has got like a veto over what you actually choose.
Yeah.
Under Melina's theory, I think.
And then Descartes also put forth a similar theory, and he puts forth this sort of story here. I'm going to read this whole thing while you try to figure out what's going on with your mic over there. You're struggling.
I'm listening.
I know you're listening, but this will fill some time. Descartes said that suppose that a king has forbidden duels, and knows with certainty that two gentlemen of his kingdom who live in different towns have a quarrel, and are so hostile to each other that if they meet, nothing will stop them from fighting. If this king orders one of them to go on a certain day to the town where the other lives, and orders the other to go on the same day to the place where the first is, he knows with certainty that they will meet and fight, and thus disobey his prohibition. But nonetheless, he does not compel them, and his knowledge, and even his will to make them act thus, does not prevent their combat when they meet being as voluntary and free as if they had met on some other occasion, and he had known nothing about it. And they can be no less justly punished for disobeying the prohibition. Now what a king can do in such a case concerning certain free actions of his subjects, God, with his infinite foresight and power, does infallibly in regard to all the free actions of all men. So I thought that was kind of a neat way of kind of solving this problem of how God can know everything, but still give us free will, because it is inherently the men's choice to fight. Like, no matter what, it is always their choice to duel and to fight. And God, in the place of the king here, is just kind of setting them on that path to meet each other. But inevitably, it all boils down to them and to their decision to fight. God is not making them fight. He's just kind of putting up the circumstances so that they meet each other.
Yeah, I get the analogy, but I don't think it's a true one, because the king doesn't really know what these guys are. In theory, one of them can find religion or forgiveness, and they won't fight to the death or duel or whatever. So there's always that possibility in the situation where you have an omniscient God who can't be wrong and already knows what the future will hold. It's different because he does know exactly what you're going to do, because he already knows that you've done it. Mm-hmm. And so it's I don't know that really solves that riddle, because the analogy is the king is not omniscient or all powerful. It may be an example of some indirect moral responsibility for the acts of others, because you put people on a path of violence, reasonably expecting it to happen. But it's interesting, I guess.
Yeah, it is interesting. Moving on to Descartes' rational theology.
Sure.
So Descartes believed that there was no distinction between creation and conservation. And so what he meant by that is that I'm a completely different person in every single moment. All right, there's nothing really keeping me who I am besides God's decision to keep creating me, keep me in creation at every given moment. So I'm created anew at each moment.
That's a good explanation of this nonsense
yes,
theory.
I don't
meaning whatsoever.
Get it. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know why that doesn't just equal conservation. Because if I'm just being created anew each moment, isn't that just conserving me?
You're not being created anew.
Yeah.
You're the same thing, just as you develop over time. So it doesn't ring true to me.
Yeah.
But
I guess the point he's trying to make at this is that, everything is completely dependent on God. Without God, nothing would ever exist. It would all just vanish in a moment. And so he kind of believes that, going back to his sort of beliefs about God and how to prove that he exists, he believed that in considering a supremely perfect being, existence is a necessity. So if I'm even considering this concept of God, this perfect being, to even conceive of a perfect being, existence is part of that perfection. And so in conceiving of God, God therefore must exist, which I know you don't buy into at all, and I don't necessarily.
Yeah, we've already discussed that. loser theory.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if I can think of him, it must be.
And Gassendi, another philosopher at this time, kind of poked the hole in that, kind of the similar point that you made, in that existence is not a perfection.
Right.
It's not inherently necessary that he must exist just because you say he is perfect. That doesn't equal that perfection.
Yeah, and we'll get to it later when I think it's in Kant and Hegel talk about, it's like, well, if you define God as something that, or someone that must exist, then of course God exists by your definition, because you've just defined it as something that's necessary, which, isn't really that informative, because you just said, well, that's what has to happen, so that's what happens.
Yeah.
Well, you haven't proved anything to me.
Yeah. Moving on to Pascal and Spinoza on God. And Pascal had a very interesting outlook, I think, on God. This was very entertaining at the very least, because he believes that through reason we are completely incapable of knowing what God is or if he exists. But nevertheless, he still believes that God exists because he believes that it's the safer bet. He believes that God is, if you just bet on the existence of God, then that's the best bet you can make. And it completely outweighs any other chance of, God not existing, because there's an infinite prize. If you bet on that God exists and you follow, what you believe God says, then there's the infinite prize of infinite life. If you're betting that God does not exist, then the prize is, insignificant.
Right.
What you win is incomparable to what you would win if God exists. And this reminded me of, I think, like back in 7th or 8th grade, I went to a Catholic school, and we were asked to go home to our parents and ask them why they want to go to heaven. So I came to you and I asked why you want to go to heaven, and you said, well, it's better than the alternative. And so that is what I told my whole 7th or 8th grade class, and my teacher got a kick out of that. So that's exactly what that reminded me of.
And it is, and those are wise words from your father.
Yes.
Well, I think this argument is the one that most people use to base their faith and their belief in God. It's like, okay, what's the alternative? To not believe, and what's the harm in having a little faith and just kind of living your life as if there is a God and you have an afterlife and all that. It's almost the most persuasive of all these arguments to me.
Really?
For why should you act in a moral fashion, just on a very basic cost-benefit analysis, selfish basic cost-benefit analysis, because like it says, if you're wrong about God not existing, well, you're just extinguished at the time you die anyway, or not have an afterlife and all that. But
and if you're wrong if you fully believe that God exists and then you're wrong, then you just end up in the same place anyway.
Correct. Right.
And you might have just left some more benefit on the world you left behind, if you follow to your faith and the goodwill and charity and all that sort of stuff that most faiths preach.
Right. Right. It's interesting. But I've heard that argument over and over again by a lot of people.
Yeah. Spinoza kind of followed a similar argument to Descartes. He said that God can be proven like any truth, so we can just use our reason. And he also stated that if we conceive of God, then existence must be in his essence, which is that similar sort of
self-definition.
Cartesian argument.
Yeah.
But he also believed that God is something bodily, and he did not choose to create everything. Everything simply comes from him by his nature. So God really didn't have that choice to create us. He never made that action. Just simply by God existing, therefore creation happened. He's not the benevolent creator of the Judeo-Christian beliefs, which I thought was very interesting.
Sure.
Because this follows into his theory that God is all of nature and that everything is God.
Right.
Which is an interesting belief, kind of strange, but very interesting.
And by the way, this last weekend was the first time that you had any spumoni.
I did have spumoni.
Which is what I've been calling Spinoza through this entire discussion.
So spumoni was very good. I recommend spumoni. Try some spumoni.
At the Wooden Nickel.
The Wooden Nickel in Kirksville,
Missouri.
One of the 5 buildings in Kirksville.
Oh, there's more than that.
6 buildings in Kirksville.
Oh, it's a cute little town.
It is nice.
You will love it.
Yes. I'm going to Truman State University. I'm sure I should clarify that. We just randomly stopped.
Well, I just thought that they should wonder that. They should just leave clues.
Leave clues.
But now you've just given away.
It's
ruined my plan to have. Where in the world is Adam Bishop?
I'm terribly sorry. I think now that you've mentioned Kirksville, I think there's only one possible place that I could be. if you've said that I've...
They have two colleges there.
Well, they have two colleges there.
There's a college.
So there's a
there,
50% chance.
Yes. True.
Right, moving on to the optimism of Leibniz. So he believed that God has all the simple qualities. And so by that he means, God has basically all of the good qualities, everything that does not contradict something else. So all of the good things that can exist in God, basically. If I remember correctly, it's been like 2 weeks.
Well, he's also talking about that God has created the best possible world. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand why people think that.
Really?
I just don't see that being persuasive at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all can see. I mean, just speaking from a personal point of view, I could be a better person. And I think everybody could be better. And the world could be better. And I think if this is the best it can get, well, why should we try to improve on it? Mm-hmm. And there's just something missing from that theory, or maybe I just don't understand it completely.
I think it's mostly used as like a counter argument to like the question of why does God allow suffering?
Right.
I mean, I think it's better than the alternative, I guess, is the response they would give, that this is the best possible world. This is as good as it gets. God wouldn't allow a world with more suffering.
Well, yeah, and he talks at Leibniz, or I guess it'd be Kenny, describes Leibniz' theory of that, like if the world has something that's not perfect, basically like there's an argument that if something is less than good, it's a kind of evil. But on the counterpoint, if it's not pure evil, then it's part good. Mm-hmm. And so to say that the world is bad, by his theory, is not true because it's not completely evil, and therefore it must be some good.
Yeah, I guess.
There's some rational basis for that, but it's. But he talks about God being, as a rational agent, chose to create the best of all possible mm-hmm. worlds. But I don't know that it's rational to have the best of all. If you have a perfect world, it'd be quite boring, mm-hmm. because then you really would know what everybody would do, because everybody would make the absolute perfect decision.
Well, then I guess that's what leads to the argument of like why there is suffering, why this is the best possible world.
Yeah, for the entertainment of God.
Well, that's not exactly where I was going, okay. but yeah, I suppose. But yeah, I guess it is kind of to actually give us that ability to have free will, because if everything was perfect, then everything's predictable. Everybody does the same thing. Everybody only does what's best, and there's no free will.
Well, I'm convinced there's free will.
Yes.
I know how I get there, or how God got there, and all that stuff. I mm-hmm. don't know, but I am also convinced, for now, that God does not yet know what I'm going to do in the future.
Okay.
And you disagree with that?
I do disagree.
Still,
with that. I do disagree.
I have not convinced you of your error.
No. Well, I don't think it's an error.
Well, that's a mistake.
I'm very sorry to disappoint.
The world is less than perfect because you were wrong about that.
All right. I appreciate it. Moving on to the God of Berkeley. So Berkeley believed that all ideas and truths exist in the mind of God. So kind of almost going back to Plato, almost in a way, with the ideals of everything exist elsewhere. And then because he states that because everything exists in the mind, then an infinite mind is needed for everything.
Right.
So that's kind of his own proof for God, using his own definition of what God is, and in order to encapsulate all of the ideas and everything, then there must be an infinite mind. Therefore, that infinite mind is God. Which
I just don't get why there has
purely.
to be.
I think it's purely based on its own definitions.
Right.
Self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
Right.
So I don't think it's really proved by anything else other than his own thoughts.
Yeah, because it doesn't. I guess the first statement of that theory that there must be that these ideas or concepts exist outside of the physical realm.
I think it also kind of goes back to what Descartes was saying, and that everything is created anew each moment,
right.
And that everything is dependent on God. So therefore, God must have the ideas and beliefs about everything in his mind at all times in order to create them anew.
Right.
And that's where we get this limerick written by Ronald Knox, trying to summarize what Berkeley believed.
I think I missed that.
Oh, you missed the limerick? You told us a limerick a while back.
I didn't tell them. I didn't tell. Oh, there.
Not this limerick, but you did tell.
I didn't share that limerick with the listener.
Oh no, that was in the podcast.
Oh, I thought you edited that out.
No, it's put at the end. It's after the.
I thought you cut that out and only had your reaction.
Oh, maybe I did. Yeah, I think my reaction's in there. Yeah,
I was pretty happy with you not sharing that.
Yes. The actual spoken limerick is not in there. People just have to guess what that was.
Yes.
But this is the actual limerick that's written in the book here that will not be edited out because it is not wildly inappropriate.
Yes. All right.
There was a young man who said God must think it exceedingly odd if he finds that this tree continues to be when there's no one about in the quad. And the answer to that was, Dear sir, your astonishment's odd. I am always about in the quad, and that's why the tree will continue to be, since observed by yours faithfully, God. So that's kind of the summarization of what Berkeley believed, and that in order for everything to keep existing, God must keep it in place.
Right.
It's kind of similar to that, if a tree falls in a forest and nobody's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. Berkeley would say yes, because God is still there, keeping everything in motion, making that tree fall down, causing everything to still exist.
Basically the glue that holds it all together.
Yeah.
There's some logic to that. I see that. That makes sense. I'm not persuaded, but it makes more sense what I was saying earlier.
And then other people have kind of tried to break apart Berkeley's theory, saying that, well, if he has the idea of everything, the belief about the smell, does God smell things? Of
course he does.
You say yes?
Yeah, why wouldn't he?
I don't know.
How would he not have the concept of smell?
Well, Berkeley disagreed. He said that God's ideas are purely intellectual. They're not conveyed by sense because God is not physical.
Well, then why did he create the sense of smell? And how did he create the sense of smell?
He's God.
But he'd have to have the concept of smell.
Well, Berkeley, I guess, would have would say that, he had the intellectual knowledge of what smell is.
You can't unless you smell it.
I guess.
Can you know a smell without the sense of smell? No.
I don't know.
You can't. Can you know what something appears visually without eyesight or some other sensor?
I'm sure that cough was really gross for all our listeners.
They were so enthralled by my words they did not notice your cough.
Did they?
Yeah, I think he's barking up the wrong tree. So I don't know. I don't. Again, I'm not impressed with that theory. But let's move on to Hume.
Hume on religion. So Hume at this time was kind of looking around at everything, and he realized that a lot of people were just basing their faith purely on miracles. Mm-hmm. They would, hear rumors of these miracles happening all over the place, and that's why they would believe in God. But then Hume kind of broke this down. He said that miracles are a violation of a law of nature.
I think that's a good definition, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was really succinct and really, really to the point of what a miracle is.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
And he believed that miracles should only be believed if their falsehood would be more miraculous than the testimony. So he believed you have to prove it beyond reasonable doubt, essentially. So he said that no miracle has been sufficiently attested to by good witnesses who have much to lose, and that there's been numerous, false miracles, and there are many ignorant and barbarous nations that all kind of profess to the belief in miracles, and that every miracle of one religion denies another. So those are his kind of big reasons for denying that miracles exist. Mm-hmm. And he goes into a lot of detail about, why a lot of these testimonies should never be believed, because these people are unreliable. They don't have anything to lose, essentially, if they are proven wrong. And that's where a lot of his issue comes in with it, and that the testimony is just not sound at all.
Well, it's hard to prove a miracle because it's something that violates the rules of nature. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Can you prove a miracle?
I guess if you saw it. But that would only prove it to yourself.
Well, the Catholic Church has a whole process to have verify miracles, which are the basis of sainthood. There have to be is it 1 or 3 or something?
I think it's like 3. I think some of them have to occur after the death.
Yeah, they got all sorts of rules.
Yeah, they do.
I think they.
It just seems weird to have a very strict guideline system for determining saints, to meet a quota to become a saint.
Yeah, well, I think they fudged it on John Paul II. That made him a saint for, I don't know. I never understood what the miracles were.
I think they've fudged it a couple times.
He's a pretty cool dude, but I think it just seems to undercut. Now, you're a saint if you're a martyr, automatically. Which I
Well,
think
there's
is
a
right.
difference, as we were taught in theology class, the difference between a capital S saint and a lowercase s saint.
Is that right?
When we go to heaven, we all become lowercase s saints. But to become a capital S saint, you have to have all of those miracles and whatever.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't remember ever hearing that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, is a martyr a capital S saint?
I'm not sure.
They darn well better be. They ought to have like some sort of dibs.
I think they might be.
They should go to the front of the line.
I know that the Catholic Church believes they automatically go to heaven, and so therefore automatically become a lowercase s saint. But I don't know if they automatically become a capital S saint.
Interesting. All right, we went down on a little.
Yes, that was a
side
little bit of a rabbit hole.
Yes.
So
Where were we at? We're about talking
Hume.
about miracles and Hume. Yes.
And so then Hume kind of also dismantled the Cartesian belief about God, kind of similar to how you did. He believed
I
that
stole
having
it from him. I read ahead.
Okay, I'm pretty sure he did not steal it from you.
Yeah, that is
That'd be
true.
pretty impossible.
Although,
He believed that having a thought about God and believing God exists are two separate things. So kind of exactly what you're saying. Just thinking about God does not inherently prove that God exists. I don't really know what I wrote here, and this is the next little.
I don't
point
know what
here.
you wrote there either. I can't see it.
Yes, that's a
And
good point.
the sun is going down, and I'm starting to have a hard time reading. We should turn on more lights.
Yeah, but that's kind of exactly what you were saying in that
Our
if we
listener
just
won't be able to see us.
think about God, if we they usually can't, and that just thinking about God, making up our own definition about God does not inherently prove that God exists. It's one thing to have a definition, one thing for the definition to actually prove the existence of God.
Hume seems to have been a better critic than putting forth his own basis for the belief in God.
Yeah,
Is
I
that right?
agree.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Moving on to Kant's theological dialectics.
Yes.
So he believed that necessity cannot really be applied to things. Simply declaring a concept does not make a thing exist, similar to what you were saying again, and that simply declaring that this is my definition, and therefore this definition must exist somewhere does not make that thing exist.
I like how he broke down the types of arguments for God, the existence of God, the ontological arguments, which is like self-definition, the cosmological proofs, which argue, something about the natural world, and then he has this physico-theological proofs as the third category. I think it kind of breaks them down pretty accurately. But yeah, I think he goes through those ontological things, and I think he does a good job, or at least Kenny describes how Kant does a good job of saying, well, you can't just say it's necessarily true by the definition of it having to be true in order for your definition of God to be accurate. Your definition creates God.
And with those cosmological proofs, he kind of dismantles those in a way a little bit too. Those are kind of the beliefs that, the prime mover, God's at the beginning of the chain of events, essentially. Because he believed that, that's invalid because God must be either in the chain or out of the chain to actually make this happen. And if he's in the chain, then how does God exist in the first place? You're missing that link in the chain that gives the basis for God. Then if he's out of the chain, how did he actually affect the world to put the chain into existence? That's kind of how he broke that down, and that, whether he's in or out, there's something missing in that link that just doesn't make any sense how it actually started.
Do you agree with that?
I don't.
Oh, okay. Why not?
Because, well, with God, if we're talking about God, something that's kind of beyond the world, outside of the world, the prime mover, going all the way back to like the ancient Greek definitions,
right.
of, kind of outside of the world. I don't think we need to provide a reason for how he affects the world if we're already putting into place that God is some sort of supremely, above being, above everything else. Because if he's, infinite and all-powerful, then why is it so necessary that we provide a strict, cause for how he actually affected the world? Because I think that's really the point that Kant's making here, is that, if he's outside of the world, how did he actually affect the world? But if we're already talking about a being that is outside of the world, do we really need to break down the details of how he actually affected the world?
It would be helpful.
Well, it'd be helpful, sure, but...
Well, it's kind of a similar argument about, like, how does your soul interact with your physical being? And I think he's making the same point. Well, how does this supra being, this being that is beyond the physical world, how is it, causing all these things to happen? And I think I think it's more than just like the first cause argument, where people think God is the mover and the causing things to happen on a regular basis, or maybe all of it. I think that argument's a little bit more persuasive against that. That he is, that God is causing all these things to happen all the time, because he's beyond that, and he is not part of the physical world that was created either by him or not. I guess I don't know. I thought it was a pretty good argument, actually.
Yeah. And then with that last category, the physico-theological arguments, this is the one that Kant respects the most. He believes, and this is the belief that that sort of kind of like grand architect, putting everything sort of into motion, regulating everything. Because Kant does agree very much so that there is, a very unbelievable almost order and regulation in the world of how everything is, perfect down to the most minute detail when you actually study like the operations of things. And so with that, he treats that with a lot of respect. And he's like, yes, that is very true. However, this argument by design only proves an architect existing, not necessarily a creator, which is a strange distinction to make.
Well, it's kind of like Star-Lord's dad on that world.
Going back to Guardians of the Galaxy too?
Yeah,
okay.
because his dad was the architect of that world, but he wasn't the creator of the universe.
Yeah, but he created that planet.
He's the architect of the planet, but he's not the creator of everything.
Well, I guess not.
Right, because he didn't create...
Well, he is the planet.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's... I guess that would be... Was that Spinoza?
I guess so.
He'd be Spinoza's god. On that, because he is the planet. The planet is him.
Chris Pratt's dad, Ego, is
Spinoza's god.
Yeah, okay.
Isn't that really is?
I guess so.
Exactly what it is.
I guess that would be.
Oh my gosh! I wonder if that was inspired. That character, Spinoza's concept of God.
Doubt it.
Who knows?
But, okay.
I guess what's his face? What's the guy that wrote all those? The guy that always had the
Stan Lee.
Stan Lee created.
But I don't know if he created that specific concept.
Yeah. Anyway, where were we at?
We were talking about the physico-theological proof.
Yes,
the grand architect.
Yeah.
So I guess he would kind of say that there is some sort of being that controlled, the processes and everything, but maybe not necessarily put all those processes into place, to not bring all of that into existence.
Right.
Which I guess is true. I don't know if
it could be true. Yeah,
it could be true.
Right.
Because I don't know if that argument by design really inherently proves a creator. And I think Kant is right. That does prove some sort of architect.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it bridges that gap to a being that actually created everything.
I think it implies. It implies a creator. I don't know that it proves it, just like Kant said.
I mean, if there's a being that has the power to regulate everything down to the atom, down to, every single minute process of everything, then I think we can reason that same being would have the power to also create all of that stuff.
Right.
But I guess it doesn't inherently prove that.
Right. I did like this argument. His argument that it's a moral necessity to assume the existence of God. That's just interesting. It's a different way of looking at whether God exists, and I guess the thought is you can't really have a moral system without the concept of God. I think maybe you could, but his argument is that it's a like I just said, it's a moral necessity to believe in God, the existence of God, just for your individual concept of morality. Do you agree with that? Or do you even know what I'm saying? Did that make any sense?
I know what you're saying. Well, how do you figure? How do you figure that God is responsible for all moral conduct?
I didn't say that. I said for my morality, for me to be moral,
yes,
to have a moral system of morals, using the word moral many times, I have a moral obligation to believe in God.
Okay.
As opposed to an intellectual obligation to believe in him. Like I may not be able to prove intellectually that God exists, but do I have a moral obligation or responsibility to believe in God?
But then why is God a necessity there for you to have those morals?
I didn't say he was.
What are you saying?
I'm saying in order for me to be moral,
okay,
I have to believe in God.
Okay, why?
Because without a truly just...
Okay, this is an
being,
argument that I've made before, actually.
in order for there to be us to have a moral system striving for good, where there has to be a truly just and moral God.
I think I've made that same argument way back when I was first talking about why I believe God is omniscient in every way. Because I made the argument for God to be that perfectly just, perfectly moral being, he needs to know kind of every outcome, every possible like right and wrong action that could occur in order to properly judge what actions we take now.
Is the morality of your actions dependent on the outcome?
I think I don't think I meant to say outcome, but to properly judge, I think I made the point
don't you judge somebody's actions based upon what is known at the time that they make the decision?
Yes, and that's actually the argument I made because I was talking like a judge with like the case files. In order to make a judgment on the case right now, he has to look back at what the similar judgments made on the case beforehand. Yeah. And for God to be that perfectly moral, perfectly just, he has to know the judgments of every other case, and that's why he has to be omniscient to properly judge each action. Why
would he have to know the future to judge those actions?
Well, because it's like I'm saying, to be perfectly just, you would know every...
He just has to be perfectly just up to that point. Why would he have to continue to be perfectly just into the future in order for him to be perfectly just now?
Well, to be perfectly just, you would have to know, what's right and wrong in every single circumstance.
That has happened up to that point, yeah. Why would you have to know what has not happened in order to be just now? I don't need to know what the judgment is going to be on something that hasn't happened for 10 years in order to be just now.
But that's the point. You're just now. How do you know if that's still going to be perfectly just in the future?
Because there is such a concept as perfectly just, and it doesn't change based upon the circumstances.
Right, it doesn't change based upon the circumstances because it's perfectly just at all times. But how do you form that basis of justice? If we go all the way back to Adam and Eve, the first decision ever made, what is God basing his judgment on?
What?
Because if you don't have
based upon the facts and circumstances that exist at that time.
But how does he know that is just or unjust if there's never been any situation like that? And if I'm talking about like a judge looking back at the case files to like determine what he is judging upon, to have that basis of right and wrong, you would have to know, what the actual actions are relative to what's going on now.
I think you're confusing consistency with justice.
But wouldn't justice always be consistent?
No.
Okay.
No, consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds.
Okay.
No, you don't want to have the same decision. I mean, you can't have the same decision on every case because every case is different.
Mm-hmm.
Literally different. So you can't have the same decision, same moral judgment more than once.
Right.
They can be pretty consistent, but they're not going to be the same because you have different people, you have different factors, you have different forces being applied to any given situation.
Mm-hmm. But you still base your final judgment on similar cases, don't you?
No, not as God. The decision. No, I completely disagree with that because the decision, the value judgment of whether an action is moral or not is not dependent upon a belief that some other action was moral or not. It is either moral or immoral on its own merits. Period.
Okay.
Do you disagree?
I guess I agree when you put it like that.
Well, you're looking at me like I'm a dummy.
I don't think I articulated properly what I meant to say, but
you say that a lot when I refute your argument.
I guess that's true.
Well, start articulating.
I'll try.
No, I mean like now.
Right now?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how to put in any better words than what I said. I'll have to think on that again.
Well, it's not better words. It's that the concept is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You're just wrong.
Okay. Moving on. Moving on to the absolute of Hegel. So he believed, he talked in terms of God as an absolute, something that is, always kind of existing. And the absolute lives only through human beings, and that it has this self-awareness of spirit through philosophers. So he kind of puts philosophers at this really high pedestal, kind of believing that God exists in all of us and in the universe, and the only way that God can, view himself is through philosophers.
This reminds me of the philosophy of the God of reason during the French Revolution, where they worshipped a fake god called reason, whatever the French word for that is. Maybe it's raison. I don't know.
I think it's similar to that.
But it's but yeah, very good. But yeah, it has this like concept of a human created almost consciousness or something that he calls the absolute.
I've kind of seen similar things nowadays with like kind of the modern way of like just trying to avoid, references to God almost in like a lot of, I don't know, it's kind of
like non-denominational spirituality.
Yeah,
BS.
Yes.
Like the Force, or like the rings of power in Tolkien, because there's this force. Or
not at all. That's not how
that's not how it is.
No, not at all.
Or like the magic from Harry Potter. Some sort of.
But I've seen it recently, like online, like on Instagram or stuff, just scrolling through things. So people kind of refer to that in like terms of the universe, where it's very clear that what they're kind of implying is God, just in different pleasing terms to everybody. Because they'll say like, well, you're the universe looking at itself when you look up at the stars or something. And it's like, well, that's just kind of some hippie weirdo stuff, but I think
Spinoza would agree with that.
I think Spinoza would agree with that, and I think Hegel would agree with that too, and that we're kind of viewing God through ourselves, and that we are kind of the eyes of God, the eyes of the universe looking at itself.
But doesn't Hegel think that the absolute is something apart from the individual human, though? I thought
yes, but it lives only through
us.
Human beings,
right? So
yes. I guess not if we were looking at other human beings. Then
so
we'd
I
be
wonder what he'd
at
think
that.
if like an alien invasion force killed all the humans. Would the absolute exist anymore, or does the absolute exist through them? I guess he'd probably think the absolute exists through them.
I guess.
I'm sure he didn't even contemplate aliens coming to the
probably
Earth
not.
or something, but moon men or whatever. Yeah, I thought that was weird. I thought it was a weird philosophy. Did you get anything out of that?
I didn't. I do like his point that faith and reason both try to find some truth.
Yes.
So they both have the same goal in mind, whether you're living through faith or through reason, you're just trying to find the truth, which I think is very true,
yes.
that they just go about different ways of trying to find that truth.
Well, they're complementary. Mm-hmm. You can't really have a moral system without considering both.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Good, we agree on that.
Yeah.
Well, you're right because you agree with me on that one.
That's fantastic.
You're only you notice you're only wrong when you disagree with me.
Funny how that works.
You'd be agreeing with me more. If I was an omniscient God, I'd be very disappointed in you.
Okay. And then Hegel also believed that our finite spirits are just a movement in the life of the infinite spirit. So in our existence, that's just kind of a fraction of what God's existence is, this absolute that lives in all of us. And that religion is necessary for the mind. In order to fully grasp how much we are actually God ourselves, we need to have that religion, that sort of structure, to allow us to understand ourselves in being part of the life of God.
I think there is an innate desire or need for religion.
Mm-hmm. But Hegel was also the one who kind of led to, supranationalist sort of ideology, in that, there's one society on Earth that's, inherently progressing better than the others. And that's kind of similar to what he's saying here, kind of contemplating ourselves with this sort of world spirit. Yes. I believe this was still Hegel.
Gaia.
Yeah, similar to Gaia, that the world spirit is constantly moving and only progressing through, reason and faith, and that, the society with the most reason and faith is the most like God himself, which is what he talked about.
Probably some truth to
chapters
that,
back, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I guess who was the philosopher that was it? Oh gosh, the state of nature guy that thought the true morality or wisdom was in a state of was it Hobbes? Hobbes was a state of nature guy. Yeah, where it was kind of like the opposite of what you're talking about. The more primitive
society corrupts instead of purifies.
Correct.
Yeah,
right,
I think you're right.
Yes. All right, excellent discussion of God. What's our next? We're going to the next book, aren't we?
Yeah, the next book in this 4-part thing. So we're 75% of the way done now.
Nice.
We'll be talking about it'll be part 4, modern philosophy, Bentham to Nietzsche.
Oh, Nietzsche. Yes.
Nietzsche.
I say Nietzsche. I don't know.
I say Nietzsche.
You say potato. I say potato. Right. You say Nietzsche, and I say Nietzsche. Nietzsche.
It's fantastic. Wasn't there a Marx Brothers skit where they did that, but they just said the same thing?
No, that was a Saturday Night Live.
Oh, that was
skit.
SNL? Oh.
Yeah, SNL, where it might have even been Jimmy Fallon. Yeah, you say potato, I say potato. You say tomato, I say tomato. Tomato, potato. It's so funny. They keep going on and on and on. Yeah, I don't know why that's so funny, but it is.
It's pretty good.
I also, after we're done with this podcast, we should have a podcast of why are things funny?
I don't know if we're the ones to talk about that.
Because I don't know why things are funny.
Yeah.
Why is something funny?
I don't know.
I think if you think...
There's a Calvin and Hobbes strip that's really just kind of depressing in that we laugh at nonsense because we have no other reaction for it.
Yeah.
If we don't laugh at it, we just sit there blankly.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. I think you have to be surprised by it a little bit.
I think there is an element of surprise.
Yeah.
Boom! Well, there's like a formula, it's like time plus tragedy equals comedy. So you just dropped your headphones. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Sorry.
So
we're having lots of technical difficulties.
Yeah, I know. We sure are. This is going to be quite a one for the listeners. We have to get right back into the swing of things.
I hope we don't lose our listener.
Yeah. All right. Any other closing remarks?
No.
All right. Well, you can follow us on Twitter still. Capital U, lowercase LMTD, capital O opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
Have we had any comments on our Twitter
not a
feed?
one.
Gosh darn it.
Well, it's been like 2 weeks without posting anything.
I know, but still you'd think somebody would stumble upon it. So maybe somebody... I have a Twitter account.
Oh, do you?
But I've never posted anything. At least not that I recall.
Should I retweet something of the official Unlimited Opinions Twitter?
I could. I think I've liked. I've liked or loved. There's like a little love icon. I guess that's a like.
I think it's a like.
The tweeters.
I think you're like the only person who's actually liked anything there.
But I have. Somebody got me in a group message thing.
Oh.
Because my what do you call that? Moniker or whatever. My name. What is it? Handle? My handle is Bishop Festus. And somebody thought I was a bishop, like a religious, like a African American bishop of some sort of church, because I'm in some sort of group thing, and I keep getting included in messages that are like I don't know, 100 African American ministers and me.
I think that's the perfect place to share the podcast.
I have not responded to any of them, but I get these little alerts that there's a group post or something.
Very funny.
It is. I'm included. I'm being tagged, I think.
I'm jealous.
Yes. Well, I could tag Unlimited Opinions and something. And maybe I could say something blasphemous to the group and get them all riled up and get all sorts of comments.
I do not think that's a good idea.
Well, any publicity is good publicity.
I guess that's true.
That's what Barnum said, I think, isn't it?
I don't know.
Where's it Bailey? Circus guys.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Oh, okay. I think it was Barnum.
I went to the circus. There's not many circuses anymore.
Well, because everybody's, it's kind of a drag to see the elephants because you're like, oh, gosh. I mean, they're neat looking and it's kind of neat how they jump on, hold each other up and, all this stuff. But it's really just depressing because, they're smart enough to know this sucks. It's like 100 degrees out here and I got my front paws on his butt. I'm prancing around in a circle under this godforsaken tent.
Yeah.
So we're all thinking, it's kind of neat, but and clowns are freaky, and carnies are dangerous. They can't get any carnies for the carnival down the street. You're 18, you can apply.
I don't want to be a carny.
You can be a carny for a day at the Firecracker Festival down the street. You got to pass a background check and pass a drug screen, which I cannot believe they actually do because I've seen those people that work those. But you won't have to set up or tear down, but you will, after zero training, be able to operate the rides all day.
Oh, good. That's fantastic.
It's really reassuring to anybody who's putting their kids on those things that spin around. I don't know what went wrong, man. That kid went flying.
I don't think I'm going to fly.
Oh, okay.
I really don't think so.
Pays $13.50 an hour.
Well,
Princely sum.
Not bad.
Not great either.
No. All right.
Yes.
Well, I think that's enough about carnies.
All right.
This has been Unlimited Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
I'm still Mark Bishop.
I really don't think I want to apply to be a carny. I don't think I give off the right vibes.
I've in my distant past thought it'd be pretty cool
For you to be a
cash.
carny?
Yeah, just work for cash and travel the United States in the back of a dirtbag trailer.
I can see you as a carny.
An angry carny. Give me the ticket, kid.